You're a young adult. You already have a foundation for real life finances, and you may be looking at me with a fair amount of skepticism, not really looking for any advice. After all, my experience being in your shoes is 40 years out of date, right? But let me reach across the bridge that divides us. I've put some time and effort, and I've got a few things I know that I can offer you, a menu you can choose off of. And the bridge that unites us is that you're a Christian like me. Let's give each other the benefit of the doubt and see if we can both honor God together. I'll tell you what I think might be useful to me, and I'd like to hear from you what my ideas spark in your life, where you're at. I do think you have it harder than I did. No doubt the economy is in much worse shape. It's harder for you to buy a house, save, or invest. When I was your age, if I did any sort of church service or leadership, that was a plus on my resume. Today, I think Christianity works against you more than it did for me. Also, education, I think, was worth more then, although it's debatable. When I finished college, I decided all it had been was a test of discipline, that it had taught me to handle workload with deadlines. Personally, these days, I don't believe that many bachelor's degrees teach anything of use, and I have found we in management just need to be much better teachers on the job. And that includes what I do, finance. The internet has really made a lot of things worse, and I'm sure you're aware of that, plus how it's affected people in your world. I attended UCLA straight out of high school, but I wasn't committed. I attended 2 quarters, one to get all D's in every class, then I repeated them to get all B's, and then I dropped out. I eventually returned to college, going all night school the whole way, paid my way working full-time days. It took me 6 years for a 4-year degree. When I got out of college, a friend of mine told me his company was hiring entry-level accountants, and I told him I had taken accounting in school and I was sure I did not want to do accounting. He said, well, the interview experience would be worth doing. So what do we all do? God made us to rise to challenges and conquer, didn't he? And guess what I've been doing for 45 years? Yep, exactly what I intended not to do. Well, technically, I conquered every baby step in front of me, but I lost job after job. Companies moving out of state or going bankrupt or merging or whatnot. I was a controller of a substance abuse nonprofit when I decided government might be more stable. So I became the CFO of a health district in Redondo Beach, California. From there, I've been the CFO of 4 different cities. Keller and Palestine in Texas, and Yakima and Federal Way here in Washington. While I've earned the respect of those I respect in my profession, I've still lost jobs. I've worked for a few cities in organizational turmoil. I really devoted myself to learning, and I've now trained my staff at each city how to invest taxpayer money. The city of Federal Way went last year from earning $70,000 in interest to earning $3.8 million in investment interest income. That paid for things like 13 new police officer positions, among other things. Now, in order to get that health district job, I applied all over the state but had to move into Los Angeles County. Our older 3 kids were public schooled, but our youngest was just starting. We started homeschooling her, and when she was in second grade, I started teaching math. I've repeated every math class from second to 12th grade now. The thing is, she's an arts and music kid. She should have hated math. I learned one thing in teaching. You can't teach anyone anything if they don't care to learn. All I did was try to make math fun. Last year, she bought a car, paying cash partially from her own investments. Now, my favorite Mark Twain quote is, "The man that holds a cat by the tail learns something he can't learn any other way." You can't learn how to swim by reading a book, for example. So the same thing is true with life's lessons. This is the Bible verse that guides me in my professional career. The nation of Israel was in captivity, conquered by the Babylonians. The prophet Jeremiah brought them a message from God. He told them that their captivity was part of God's plan, and he gave them a little purpose during their exile. And work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. How I choose to apply this is that as a government finance director, if I work for the good of the citizens, and also the people who work for me, and also the people in other departments that actually mow parks grass, fill potholes in the streets, or fight crime, then God will honor my efforts serving in my job. I've taught municipal investing to finance folks from several cities who came to my city hall. I've taught to a statewide audience in Chelan, Washington, and I've taught a national audience in Orlando, Florida. I've enjoyed that success, but I'd like to have an impact a little closer to home. Homeschooling, I made finance relevant from kindergarten on, and in 12th grade there's actually a math class called Personal Finance. To tell you the truth though, I've never stopped trying to life coach those I care about. I have nephews and others that I wish for their success more than they do, and some want wealth given to them. They don't want to learn, and I can't help someone who isn't interested in learning. This keeps me humble. How can I be a better teacher? Emily and I were out driving. I was the driver's training teacher for our homeschool, and she had progressed to the point where I was starting to give her goals 5 miles out. I might say, drive me to Lowe's. She'd say, do I turn right or left here? And I'd say, you're driving. I was trying to teach her to think for herself, to be independent, that when there is no one right answer, she had to make the decision. But I also learned that that lesson applies totally across all areas of life. It's a mistake to give someone all the answers, not that let them do it themselves when they really can. So today, when we're doing our finance check-in, I'm just trying to be her sounding board, staying involved because I'd rather she be having conversations with me than leaving her completely on her own, but she's definitely driving now. When I lived in California, I put this on my license plate. I love clever vanity plates. This is 7 verses of the Bible reduced to 7 characters. Fits on a license plate. Some of you have been in Awana. You might have memorized the Great Commandment found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I like Matthew's version. I stink at memorizing, and I can paraphrase it if someone asks me what the license plate means. Anyone want to take a stab at it? Anyone know what it says? Well, here's the Bible verse in its entirety. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. So, knowing the whole verse, all 7 verses, can anyone tell you what my license plate means? The answer is God is number one in my life. You're number two. Now, does this go against what the culture tells us, and particularly when we're talking finances? We're all carrying devices, phones, and whatnot, and I can absolutely guarantee that they are luxuries, not necessities. Some of you are familiar with minimalists who tell you that you can get by with 7 gray t-shirts and a couple of pairs of jeans, and we admire their discipline, right? But hear me on this. You are your own worst enemy. If you're an adult making your own decisions, you got to blame yourself if you're letting others influence you. Dave Ramsey says, stop spending money you don't have for things you don't need to impress people you don't know. So go back to that Bible verse. Is God really God? Is he the God of your life? Do you believe that his way of living life is going to get you better results? If so, put him first, put others second, and trust that he will take care of you. Is that a weird way to trust that life will work out? Could it be that life is a game and once you understand the rules, you can win if you abide by the instructions? You can't cheat. We're talking God here. He knows your heart. He knows what you give to the church. He knows what you think. He knows what you do. As a young adult, I did a lot of self-help reading. I read this book when it came out. I'll read a book cover to cover, even if I only get one pearl of wisdom, on page 239 or what have you. In this book, I got it on page 1. On the very first page, I was seriously blown away when I read this quote. Wealth is different from income. Your income is what you earn. Your wealth is what you accumulate. If you make a lot of money and spend it all, you're not wealthy. You're living a high consumption lifestyle. My kids used to be envious of fancy cars. Wow, they're rich. I'd say not anymore. They spent it all on that car. And there's some truth to that. You could write this one down. Your wealth isn't what you make, it's what you keep. So let's get conversational. I don't care if you're in kindergarten or you're 40 years old, there are 3 things you can do with money. If I give you $3, what are your choices? I'd give Emily $3 a week because I wanted to teach something weekly so that when they're a grown up, it was really basic foundational truth. What do you think? I have them in a specific order, and I'll put the answers up as soon as you shout out the 3 different answers, and we'll pause for that. Now, this may take some discussion. We're going to church every week, and we may not pass an offering plate every Sunday in this church. I don't care. The first thing we do is tithe. When we create a budget, the first thing we budget is giving back to God. The second thing is save. You pay yourself. You invest in your own future. You're making it a priority to provide for your own future, but not just your own. Part of being an adult is not merely being a consumer. Are there Bible verses that talk about this? Of course there are. I would love to do a whole talk just on tithing. What it is, why did God invent it, why it applies to us. Genesis 4 describes Abel bringing his first and best, but Cain did not. Cain sinned and then got mad because God judged him for falling short and he killed his brother. Boy, talk about sin compounding sin. I could put 20 Bible verses on the screen and we could read them, but I'm going to just say that giving to God is the very first thing you do when you budget. Your best, your first fruit. I really don't think it's wise to argue this one. More importantly, it's important for me to teach it as the very first thing. Of the three things, tithing is the first. This book was written in 1926. It's teaching by parable. It's not a biblical book, not written by a Christian as far as I know. If you're one of those who associates Babylon with evil and Revelation, put that aside. I've given away scores of copies of this book to every young person I have ever been in a position to help. It's a small book. It's easy to read. It teaches the wisdom of saving, paying yourself first, and since it skips tithing, I have to add that that is actually first. But it teaches that if you make saving and investing part of your disciplined routine, it will put you on a trajectory you will otherwise never attain and only envy others. Now, once you're saving, what do you do with your savings? The first thing is to open an online savings account that pays way more than most banks like B of A or Wells Fargo. Emily found Ally Bank, and I ended up moving my savings there. These days, it pays 4%, which is a really decent rate. And when you add every month consistently, guess what happens to your interest income? It grows increasingly, and that is the very beginning of having your money work for you. It's only a start, but it's an important start. Life is going to happen, so just get into the habit of always saving a little out of every paycheck for the rest of your life. You are very likely bombarded with tips on how to generate wealth, and we all get tired of hearing that Starbucks coffee is the money that we're wasting that would otherwise make us wealthy, right? And while playing defense, guarding your hard-earned money is one thing, I want you to consider offense. Your income is your real economic engine, and you can add $20,000 per year a whole lot easier than saving $20,000 a year. And the difference is that growth is what you want, not pruning your budget. Here's the thing, it's up to you to grow your abilities, skills, experiences, and improve how you interact with people in the real world. This is the foundational truth that I teach to new finance directors and city treasurers. When we're managing other people's money, taxpayers, we prioritize safety, liquidity, and yield in that order. You should too. Guard your money's safety by keeping enough in your checking account so that you never bounce a check. Keep enough liquidity in your savings so that if there are surprises, you have savings where you can get it in a hurry. And having taken care of your checking account and your savings account, you can build your investments and grow your yield, making your money work for you so that increasingly your wealth comes from your investments. Why would you keep more in your checking account? Because you never want to bounce a check. Now, how much depends on you. I can't tell you. You know if you've created a budget. Only you know if you're being honest with God and yourself, and only you know if you're sticking to your budget. If you're not tithing, not adding to your savings, and not investing after every paycheck, you're not really in control and you know it. You have to make a legit budget and you have to know how much you're leaving in your checking account as extra. 100% always, never fails. It's always in your checking account. If you worry about bouncing a check, you need to raise that amount. It's almost the same sort of thing when it comes to savings. Sure, you want to maximize the amount that you invest with, but you have to leave something in savings, always. Add to your savings a little bit every paycheck. Also, make sure you know how long it takes to transfer from savings back to your checking account. You can't buy a set of tires from savings. And again, you won't be earning as much as your investments, but you should be earning a decent rate on what you have in savings. There are several online banks that are FDIC or FSLIC insured, and it doesn't take much time to find one. Don't stress over finding the perfect one because rates change and it's impractical to switch banks every time the rankings change. So let's talk investing. First, there are several online investment ways to go. I use E-Trade, and here the important thing is that you're using a reputable platform. Fraud occurs when you use a broker that gives you a report that says you own a bunch of stock and it turns out that you don't. They faked you out. Use a platform that someone you respect uses. Second, don't buy individual stocks. Start out buying shares in the S&P 500. That's diversifying across 500 companies. When the stock market goes up, your investment grows. The other thing you can do is when savings rates go way down, buy CDs. This would be like buying one 3-year CD per month, and when one matures, you buy another one 3 years out. Now that's just a taste of investing, but you can do each of these right now, and that would get you started. So how do you get started? First, tithe. I don't care if it's $20 per paycheck. If you're doing zero right now, you know that's wrong. Get started, then get better. Second, open a checking account. If you don't have one, you need one, and I'm guessing we all use debit cards, but not a prepaid card, a legit checking account. Third, open a savings account. That's an online savings account, might be a different institution than where your checking is at, but you simply set up transfers back and forth. Fourth, actually put money in your savings account. And fifth, add to it every payday. And that's how you get to Dave Ramsey's first baby step. Congratulations, you have $1,000 in savings. Now let me tell you the problem with that. What if it took you 3 years to get to, and you find out that you need a set of tires? Well, great, you have the money, but how long is it going to take you to rebuild that 1,000? This is the problem. The goal wasn't really to have $1,000 in savings. The goal was to add to savings every paycheck, and you want that $1,000 far, far in your rearview mirror. You want to be tithing and adding to your savings every month, and your budget had better start with those two things. If you're tithing 10% and saving 10%, then you reach your $1,000 and you never look back. And at some point, you decide that you have too much liquidity in savings, and that's when you start investing. A little every paycheck. Now I'm going to diverge from Dave Ramsey again. Get a credit card. If you don't have one, you'll go somewhere like Discover Card and you'll give them $300 or so for what they'll call a prepaid credit card or a credit builder card. Here's what I want you to do with it. Buy gas with it, and as soon as you get home, pay it right back down. Yep, another transfer you have to set up between banks. What will happen is they'll increase your credit limit after time, and after about 2 years, they'll give you your $300 back and do everything they can to tease you into charging stuff with that new credit limit. Now, if you've been developing financial discipline, you should be able to resist that temptation. But we're not stopping there. Now, I want you to go to your bank where your checking account is and apply for a Visa card, and that's where you'll build up your credit limit. This goes against Dave Ramsey's advice, so you'll need to decide what you think. But I have more. Here's why I want you to have that credit card. You have an emergency, car trouble, tires, medical problem, refrigerator goes out, whatever. You whip out your credit card and you take care of it right now. I don't mean wait 3 days for a savings transfer. You need to be a grown-up, responsible enough to handle stuff, and now you can. And then you go transfer that same amount out of savings, which takes 3 days, and you pay off that credit card immediately, right back to zero. And then you go back to rebuilding your savings. And we've already talked about how that habit, we've already talked about how to be in that habit. And now you see why. And do you see the power you need to control? But you have to earn it and you have to build it. I'm just about ready to stop, but there's a bunch more we could talk about. These are for other sessions. I want you to live your life God's way using God's principles, and the Bible isn't terribly clear about the specifics you have to navigate in modern life. However, life's principles are pretty basic. I hope I've given you a start on seeing that living your life God's way is the best approach. If you can get started, I hope all of you already are started, but I hope I've given you at least one idea you can put into practice. Then all the things you see here become more attainable, and I'm sure you can see that. Honor God by putting Him first, others second, and yourself third. Trust Him to take care of you. One of the ways He takes care of you is when you're around other committed Christians and you're living your life according to God's rules, not the way the culture around us teaches. My kindergarten lesson will serve you, and you can teach it to your kids. If you only get $3, spend them in order. Tithe, save, and spend. Tithe 10%, save 10%, and live your life on the 80%. Focus on building your skills to increase your income. Being a responsible adult is taking care of others, not just yourself. Don't be a consumer, be a giver, and be hanging around people who make you a better person, living life according to God's biblical values. Thank you for listening. With that, I'll take questions. We can have some discussion.